Hi, and welcome to the Stage 18 review. In Stage 18, we cover a lot of material. We learned that Latin nouns belong to one of three grammatical genders. They're masculine, feminine, or neuter. We learned that adjectives have to agree with their nouns, not only in case and number, but also in gender. We learned that relative pronouns agree with their antecedents in number and gender, although they take their case from their function within their own relative clause. And finally, we learned the forms of neuter nouns of the second and third declensions. So by the end of this stage, you should be able to identify the case, number, and gender of a noun, be able to modify a noun with an adjective in the same case, number, and gender, and identify the case, number, and gender of a relative pronoun, and recognize that its number and gender agree with that of its antecedent. You should know that the nominative singular of a neuter noun is identical with the accusative singular, that the nominative plural of a neuter noun is identical with the accusative plural and always ends in short A. And you should be able to fill in the following charts. First, puella. The first declension is almost all feminine nouns. There are a few masculine nouns, like, for example, poeta or nauta or agricola. These nouns are first declension nouns. They decline just exactly like puella, but they're masculine because they are jobs associated with men: poet, sailor, farmer. Other than that kind of word, first declension nouns are feminine. There aren't any neuter nouns in the first declension. So here's our old friend: puella, puellae, puellae, puellam, puella, puellae, puellarum, puellis, puellas, puellis. Nothing new here. Just remember, first declension nouns, mostly feminine, except for a few masculines. Now the second declension. We already know servus, servus, servi, servo, servum, servo, servi, servorum, servis, servos, servis. You know servus is a second declension noun because its genitive ends in long I. And masculines of the second declension will decline just like servus. There's a few that don't have this US in the nominative, like, for example, faber, fabri. You can tell it's second declension because it's got the long I in the genitive. But other than that ER in the nominative, it works exactly like servus. Okay, so fabri, fabro, fabrum. Now we're adding in the neuter noun templum. So if you look at the endings here, it looks exactly like servus in the genitive and dative singular and plural, exactly like servus in the ablative singular and plural. The accusative singular templum looks just like servum. But look at the nominative singular. Remember, neuter nouns, the nominative and accusative look just alike. And in the plural, the nominative and accusative look just alike and end in short A. So templum, it's a second declension noun. See, it's got that long I in the genitive, just like fabri or servi, but it's neuter. So nominative and accusative look alike, and in the plural, they end in short A. Now let's look at nouns of the third declension. So leo has been our example for the way masculine and feminine nouns of the third declension work. You can tell it's a third declension noun because its genitive ends in is. If you look at the genitive, that gives you the stem, leon, that we see throughout, except in the nominative singular. Remember, third declension nouns, the nominative singular can just look like anything. Look to the genitive singular for the stem that you're going to use throughout the other cases. So, Leo, Leonis, Leoni, Leonum, Leone, Leones, Leonum, Leonibus, Leones, Leonibus. And that's how masculines and feminines of the third declension work. Well, now if we look at nomen, if you look at the genitive and dative, singular and plural, they work exactly the same way that Leo does. Ablative, singular and plural, exactly like Leo. Nomen is the nominative singular. Remember, the nominative singular of a third declension noun can look like anything, but if it's a neuter noun, its accusative will look exactly the same. Whatever that nominative singular looks like, the accusative singular looks the same. Now remember, we went to the genitive for the stem. Take off the is ending and you get the stem that we see everywhere else. You see it there in the plural nominative, plural accusative with the short a ending because it's a neuter. Nominative and accusative plural look alike and they end in short a. So we end up with nomen, nominus, nomini, nomen again, nomina, nomina, nominum, nominibus, nomina, nominibus. Neuters of the third declension. The third declension is a little more complicated though, because as you remember, we just added in these I stems. So masculine and feminine I stems, our sample is kiwis. So kiwis nominative, kiwis genitive. You can tell it's third declension because it's got that is ending. Kiwi, kiwem, kiwe, just like Leo. Kiwes. Here's where the I stemness matters. Kiwium. And then kiwibus, kiwes, kiwibus. So masculine and feminines of the third declension differ from the I stems, differ from the not I stems only here in the genitive plural where you have that I. Now we're adding in mare. Mare is a neuter I stem of the third declension. Now this one is not in your about the language section, but it is in the back of the book. And it's important that you know it, as you're going to see when we look at adjectives in a bit. So mare is a neuter of the third declension. So as you'd expect, the nominative and the accusative look exactly the same. Okay. And maris, that looks fine. Mari, that looks fine. But look at the ablative singular. I stem neuters have a long I in the ablative singular. They don't look like Leo or nomen or kiwis there. Now let's look at the plurals. Maria, again, there's that I, right? And if it's there in the nominative, it must be there in the accusative. So Maria and Maria. Then Mariam, again, there's that I. Maribus, maribus, dative and ablative plural. So let's look at this again. Mare, nominative. Maris, mari, mare again, because it's neuter. Mari, so that's a weird I stem ending. Maria, there's that I again. Mariam, there's the I again. Maribus, Maria, nominative and accusative look just alike. And maribus. So where does the I show up? It shows up there, and there, and there, and there. Okay, so neuter I stems, the I shows up in all four of these places. This is really important because, and this is a chart from the back of the book of adjective forms. So let's look at the third declension ones first, since we were just talking about third declension I stems. All adjectives that take third declension endings are I stems, and the I will turn up all the places where the I turns up in mare. So if you have a third declension adjective, the dictionary hopefully will give you the masculine and the feminine and the neuter. And then after that, we're going to take endings that look like the endings of mare or the endings of kiwis. So fortis, 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 that's fine. Forti, 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 fine. Fortem, fortem, forte, where the nominative and accusative of the neuter look just alike. And now, forti, 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 there's that I. All third declension adjectives are I stems. Everywhere that mare has an I or that kiwis has an I, these third declension adjectives will have an I. Okay, fortes, fortes, fortia, there's that I again. Fortium, 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 there's the I. Fortibus, fortibus, fortibus. Fortes, fortes, fortia, there's the I. Fortibus, fortibus, fortibus. So again, right, there's the I, the I, the I, throughout the genitive plural, and in the neuter nominative and accusative plural. All third declension adjectives are I stems, and they have that I any place that kiwis and mare have the I. First and second declension adjectives, people find these a little easier. In the masculine, they work like servus. In the feminine, they work like puella. In the neuter, they work like templum. So if you can do servus and puella and templum, then you can do the masculine, feminine, neuter, singular, and plural of first declension, second declension adjectives. Remember, second declension, masculine endings, second declension, neuter endings, first declension, feminine endings. There's a chart for relative pronouns too. Okay, we've been dealing with the nominative and accusatives in the stories we've been reading. Okay, the trickiest thing here, well, as you'd expect, the neuter, nominative, and accusative look just alike, singular and plural. But what's tricky is the form qui is feminine singular nominative, feminine plural nominative, neuter plural nominative, or accusative. That's a little tricky, okay? Be careful of that. And again, this chart's in the back of your book. One more thing to look at from the book. Now, in the last stage, we started listing nouns by their nominative and their genitive. And we said that that's because the genitive really shows you for sure what declension a noun belongs to. So dea, dei, the genitive is in AE, so it must be first declension. Now we're starting to add in the gender. So it's dea, dei, feminine. And this is just the way that any Latin dictionary would list it. We're not going to change this up on you again. So let's look at some examples. Dea, dei, feminine, first declension. How about caput? Caput, capitis. Okay, this genitive shows you its third declension and it gives you the stem that we're going to use for the other cases, and it's neuter. Okay. Pars, partis, third declension. There's the stem, part, and this one is feminine. So the vocab checklist is going to give you all the info you need. Nominative, genitive, which tells you the declension and gives you the stem, and gender. If you need to know the gender of a noun and you can't remember it from learning it from the vocab checklist, you'll need to look it up in the back of the book where all the nouns are listed by nominative, genitive, and gender. As always, you should know all the words in the vocab checklist, both from Latin to English and from English to Latin.